Welcome to Capitalize Your Finances, the podcast that's your ultimate guide to mastering personal finances and unlocking the secrets of entrepreneurship. Each week, we dive into the world of personal finance and business development and have fascinating conversations with industry experts, seasoned entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their insights, strategies, and stories to help you get ahead in life. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur looking to scale your business or someone just starting out on your financial path, this podcast is your go-to resource for inspiration and actionable insights.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Chris Frey Poniotu, certified financial planning professional, the Cap in Capitalize. And on today's episode, I'm going to get into 11 unwritten rules that keep people wealthy. But as always, before I do so, your free advice for the week. If an investment is not clear enough for you to explain to a third grader, don't touch it. Far too often, I see people, frankly, from all walks of life, whether it's in my office, people DMing me, just friends asking me random questions about certain investments, whether that's a piece of real estate, a stock, a bond, you name it. And quickly, I realized that they don't actually know what they're talking about or wanting to buy because they heard it from someone who heard it from someone who heard it from someone. Or it might be a new hot topic and everyone's getting into it, but yet it's this obscure investment. Keep it really simple. And I can tell you the most successful people, financially speaking and investment speaking, have made their money by investing in a few simple to understand companies that happen to produce a boatload of money. So there's your free advice for the week. And let's get into the 11 unwritten rules that keep people wealthy. Number 1, avoid unnecessary risk. So there's this misconception with building wealth and wealthy people in regards to them being risk takers. And there's truth to that to a degree, because let's just face it, a lot of wealthy people have started businesses and grown them, sold them, or have grown them, and they keep, reaping the benefits. But once you get past the initial stage of taking that risk and breaking even on the business, most wealth creators are pretty meticulous and regimented and cautious with growing their net worth. And you've got to remind yourself that if people do have money, now get like the trust fund babies out of the way, that's a whole different bag of worms. If you've grown your net worth to what it is today, or people, that have grown their net worth to what you would think is a substantial degree, and you consider that wealth, it's because they've been very careful about it and diligent. And the most successful people, and I'm just going to speak for myself on this, that I've worked with, that I help plan for them, they are much more conserved about preserving their hard-earned wealth. And again, calculated wealth. And they would much rather just compound things steadily versus taking unnecessary, excessive risks to further build their already massive financial pile. Like, they've already won, so they don't need to keep winning. And you can learn a lot from that, because if you do compound steadily, obviously we all want to make as much money as humanly possible, but you want to do it in a calculated risk management like perspective. You don't want to just swing for the fences every single day. And even if you are starting with a small amount of money, yeah, you might want to take a big swing to get the ball rolling. But even with that, when you really understand what you're investing in, how much risk are you actually taking when you know the company or you know the piece of real estate? So, and then one little quick fun fact for this. Making money and managing money are two totally separate skills, and very few people have both of them. Number 2, minimize taxes. I've said this ad nauseum in the past, and I will keep saying it because I love it. The greatest investment return that you can guarantee is not an investment. It is the taxes you avoid. And I'll use some analogies for that. So let's say you're in your 20s and you're in a lower tax bracket because, frankly, when you're in your lower 20s, you more likely are relative to when you get into your 40s and 50s and 60s, the stride of your career. And when you're in a lower tax bracket, you're not paying as much in tax. And because of that, you want to invest within your retirement plan if you have the ability to, which most people do, after tax, Roth. And the reason why is you want to get the low tax bracket years. You just want to pay the tax at that bracket, get that out of the way, and then have that money grow tax-free. Well, let's say you're in the 12% tax bracket today and you are putting money into your retirement plan, you're getting your match. And then when you get to retirement, like, it's not crazy for any of you that are in your 20s to think about contributing to your retirement plan today and get up to at least the match. Obviously, put in as much as you can afford to do so. But then when you get to, retirement age, you could have a couple $1 million. Let's say it's $3 million in retirement assets. Well, if you started drawing off of that at that time, and let's say that you took, I don't know, 120 grand a year, so 10 grand a month. Well, that would be, if it wasn't tax-free, you'd be in probably the 24% bracket at that point. But because you were diligent about paying the 12% bracket today and letting all that money grow tax-free, you're not paying tax on that ever again. Now let's flip that. Let's go to someone in their 50s. You're a high income earner. Let's say you're a surgeon, okay? You're in the 37% tax bracket. And most people, I would say 95% of people, when you get to retirement, you're generally in a lower tax bracket as opposed to when you're working. And so let's just keep going with that analogy. Let's say that you're in the 37% bracket when you're working, but then when you retire, that same person is in the 15% bracket. Well, you avoided 37% today to pay 15% in retirement without talking about anything else on the investment side of things. I just made you a boatload of money in taxes you will never, ever, ever pay to the government. So if all that's to say, if given the choice, the wealthy would prefer the options pay the tax later or pay the tax not at all. Now, obviously, you can't completely avoid tax, legally at least, but we can do our best. We can do our absolute best to avoid as much tax as humanly possible. And for those of you that are listening in that are newly wealthy, first off, awesome, congratulations. But you may not be aware of what potential tax liability. You may not be aware of what that liability will be, or the vehicles that you can use to protect on that, because not every investment is the same. And it's worth having those valuable conversations with someone that knows what's up in that department. And that would include a CPA, a qualified certified financial planner, and an estate planning attorney. Occasionally a tax attorney if you're like uber wealthy. But sticking to those first three, you're going to be good. Now, the third unwritten rule that keeps people wealthy: don't let your kiddos treat wealth like a handout. And this goes for you that, if you have kids or grandkids. So generally this is how it works when it comes to legacy. The first generation makes the money. The second generation tries to hold on to it. Third generation blows it. And there's actually a technical term. It's called the third generation curse. You need to teach your children or grandchildren the responsibilities of not only wealth in general, but specifically their wealth, which can help solidify a lasting legacy. And I've talked about this a lot in the past, and it's worth mentioning again. Stewardship of your money is incredibly important, and your money, depending on the level of wealth that you're talking about, and wealth is a relative term. I'd like to think that there's a huge difference between being rich and wealthy. I mean, I know people that are just flat out rich and wealthy. I know people that I don't think most people would consider them rich, but relative to what I know from a planning standpoint, I would consider them more than wealthy. They have more than enough money to put food on their table. They can do whatever they want, and they live within their means. I think that's wealthy. But I know for the majority of you, when we're thinking about this wealth and in being rich, that can be, and when I think of rich, I think of like stupid money. But even then, that's all relative. But when you get to a point where you know objectively that it's not only going to last for your lifetime, it's going to last your kids' lifetime, probably your grandkids, maybe even great grandkids and beyond. That's when stewardship becomes extremely important, because your money becomes, it's almost like it's its own entity. It's its own business. So number 4, this is one of my favorites. Ask about everything. I would say it is valuable to do research before making any major decision. And when this comes to the topic of wealth, it is especially valuable. You don't want to have someone just starting out. You don't want to have someone that frankly has never been in that situation. The wealthy generally prefer to work with someone who has solved the same problem for someone they know. And so if their friend is satisfied, that's generally good enough for them. And it's always okay to ask. In my advice, really, regardless if you're wealthy or not, never stop asking. Always be curious. Number 5, quality long-term relationships are where true wealth lies. So you're going to want to make sure that you have people in place before you need them, if that makes sense. The wealthy understand this benefit of outsourcing more than anyone. And if you want to maintain your wealth, you have to figure out this step as soon as humanly possible. And it doesn't happen often anymore. I'm just going to speak personally, but for a second. But I've had a few people in the past that have, I would say, what most people consider to be true wealth, but they think that nobody can do it better than them. And you can fill it with whatever you think is appropriate. And by doing so and having that thought process, they're bottlenecking their wealth. Also, it's narcissistic and beyond egotistical, and the vast majority should not be doing the whole wealth management thing on their own. The vast majority. Like I would say maybe 1% could figure that out. But even then, I mean, I can think of a number of billionaires that are in the world of wealth management, and they want to do it. They could do it on their own, but they have people. Even Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner, who's been he passed away a couple of years ago. For the longest time, he managed everything on his own. Well, he had a couple apartment complexes. He had a property management company manage it. He didn't want to manage it. So that was a common misconception people had. Now, granted, this was a lot, this was a lot further along in his life when I think he even knew that mentally he was starting to lose a thing or two. Cause you do when you get older, you just do. I know everyone was like, well, he was as sharp as his tack until the day he died. Well, yeah, but maybe relative to what he was. But you still lose a step or two. And he outsourced some of his money to Lee Lu, a hedge fund manager, actually in our backyard in Seattle. And so he understood that outsourcing is incredibly valuable, even though he did manage a good chunk of it. So number 6, you are never too wealthy to look for a great deal. Now, I want to be really clear on this one. This does not mean that wealthy people are cheap, because that is the farthest thing from the truth. Wealthy people are human. And if there's a dollar on the ground, they're going to pick it up. And fun little story about this. One of my cousins is a caddy on the PGA, LPGA. And back in the day, he caddied locally at Chambers Bay Golf Course, which the US Open was hosted here like a decade ago. And our local community is like still holding on to that as the glory days, which is kind of funny. But regardless, it's a nice golf course in our area where quality golf events have been held. And he was actually the first caddy to be hired at that golf course. And he caddied for a ton of athletes and celebrities. And one of the stories that come to my mind when I was thinking about this episode was when he caddied for Bill Gates. And apparently on hole 2, I think it was like 2 or 3. So Nick, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but I think it was 2. Bill saw a penny on the ground and he was giddy when he picked it up. And he told my cousin that it was his lucky day. And I kind of find that funny. I mean, Bill Gates is worth over $100 billion, and he still got fired up picking up a penny. And this is obviously a very extreme, probably the most extreme example I could think of. But the point still stands. And fun little fact about value, according to Costco's website, more than 1/3 of their members make over $125,000 a year, which according to SoFi.com, anyone that makes over $120,000 a year is considered wealthy, according to 85% of the United States population. So it was kind of interesting. Number 7, choose value over price. The wealthy value service. All caps, bold, underline, italicized. They build relationships with people in stores and when they're out and about. They're also phenomenal at taking advice, which is a huge misconception that people think about wealthy. They think that these people, it's like, oh my gosh, I can do everything myself and I'm just the greatest thing since sliced bread. No, that's the farthest thing from the truth. I actually just thought about this. One of my favorite books, I haven't read it in a while. I'm probably going to reread it again soon. Business Brilliance. So it talks about a lot of the most successful people from a financial standpoint. And 8 out of 10 multimillionaires, which they considered worth $100 million or more, were actually some degree of rather severe autism. And the reason why the author brings that up, and I'm misquoting it a little bit, but the point still stands, is these founders and these wealth creators understood very quickly that they were hyper-focused and great at X, whatever that was. And they also understood that due to their autism in this degree, it was limiting them in all other areas. So they had to go and hire and find people very quickly to fill the gaps and the holes in their business that they knew, in some cases, they literally just could not do. Okay. Like, I mean, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I'm not the best at admin. That's why I have Betty helping me out, my amazing teammate. Could I do it? Yeah, I did it when I first started. It was absolute hell. But, I brought her on because she's amazing at it. And that allows me to go and do my other thing. Some of these founders, like in that same context, they cannot, like they mentally, physically, whatever, they could not do, in this case, admin. So they immediately had to bring someone on, and that allowed them to rev the engine and compound their area of expertise that much faster. And due to their gift, and I am calling it a gift of autism in this regard, they were so hyper-focused and they just clicked better than anyone else, You fast forward and you compound that hundreds of thousands or millions of times in your business. It's no shocker that 8 out of 10 multi-millionaires have some degree of that. And that goes back to the relationships on things and taking advice. Now, I also want to be clear on the value over price, because wealthy people, they're not pushovers. You don't build a sizable, like objectively sizable net worth and just be pushed over all the time. Wealthy people know when to negotiate, because there is a time and place when it's appropriate, but they put the most emphasis on the value of the relationships that they have, because they know the return on investment within that relationship, the money is going to flow and catch up. And another way to think about it is they understand this, because for most things, by negotiating and all of that, they're actually losing money on trying to penny pinch all of the time, because their hourly earning rate is so high that by doing what they're doing, there's actual no return on investment. And also, just one more thing before we get into the commercial break. Qualitatively speaking, nobody likes a cheap steak. They're some of the worst people in the world. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we're going to keep going through these 11 unwritten rules that keep people wealthy. So don't go anywhere. Stick around.
Are you ready to transform the way you approach sales? This episode is sponsored by the second book in the Capitalize series, Capitalize Your Sales, the all-in-one sales framework that saves you from ever struggling again and teaches you how to sell with sincerity, which dives deep into the art and science of driving sustainable growth. Packed with strategies that go beyond surface-level techniques, this book will help you understand what it takes to truly connect with clients, build long-term relationships, and close deals. Whether you're looking to fine-tune your sales craft or break through to the next level, Capitalize Your Sales offers a roadmap to success designed for today's fast-paced business world. Head on over to your favorite bookstore, order today, and start capitalizing your sales immediately. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome back from the commercial break. We're going to get into number 8 of the unwritten rules that keep people wealthy. And this one is not talked about much, but it should be. Splitting the check. Over the years, my wealthiest clients, when we go out to dinner, have insisted on just splitting the check and making it easy and not awkward. One thing I've actually realized just now is the majority of them, when we sit down at dinner, that's the first thing they say. Obviously, they'll say like, "How are you?" and the pleasantries. But once you get through that, that's the first thing they're like, "Hey," I can think of one in particular, which of course I'm not going to say who he or she is, but they sat down. We got dinner actually a couple months ago, and just laid the ground rules. We're going to split the check 50-50. Do you drink? And I was like, "No, I don't drink." He goes, "I do. So I'm going to take the alcohol, but then we're going to split 50-50. Cool. And done." And I think it was nice because, and I actually always think it's appropriate. And the reason for that is, and think about this. Have you ever gone out to dinner with a friend or even a family member, and you pick up the check because you were, and again, you're sincere with this, but you sincerely think you're being nice. And then your friend goes, "I got the next one." And then you go out to dinner the next time, and subconsciously, you're kind of keeping score. And unfortunately, being in the keeping score situation, it will never end well. It will never end well. Because if you get it wrong, it's going to look really bad. And it's going to be uncomfortable. And no one wants to be taken advantage of. So when you're in these social situations with wealthy people, or really just, I think anyone in general, always insist on paying, your share in social situations. And it's just, I've noticed this just with wealthy people in general, it's a common understanding. And they don't want to feel that they are in relational debt. That is the worst feeling in the world. Number 9, giving to charity. You're probably like, well, if you're giving money away, how does that make you wealthy? For starters, paying it forward always, it always comes back to you in some way. And the wealthy understand this more than anyone. Now, I can make a sincere argument, biblically speaking, it's not yours to begin with. It is yours to be a steward of, and you need to know the difference. Sometimes the wealthy give personally. Other times they give it through their business, if they run one or if they're an executive. And the reason why it's not oh, look at me. It's they want to show their community that they want to reinvest back into their community as a sign of genuine thanks because their community in essence made them who they are. And of course, we all know those people, especially in the world of wealth, where they do the giving to play the game, but eventually you're going to be caught. And when you're caught, it's going to be really, really bad, really bad. So just give genuinely. And even if you don't have the financial ability to do so, there's nothing better than giving your time. Sometimes in the moment, you may not feel like it, but in the long run, you look back and you go, man, I did a good deed. Like that felt good. Number 10. This one is, I think, pretty obvious, but it's worth noting. Making friends of similar status. One thing I noticed early in my career when our practice started to grow and we started to work with people of higher net worth is wealthy people are in this perpetual state of curiosity. And they want to surround themselves with like-minded people in dynamic ways. And really that's no different than anyone else. I mean, you want to be around people that are like you. I mean, it's kind of the way that the world works. And so when it comes to business, the wealthy want to get to know the next generation of fiscal success. Now, I want to be really clear on something here. And I've said this a couple times in the past, and I don't know if it's hit for everyone, so I really need to hammer this home. Do not leave friends or separate a friendship because of their financial status. Ever. Just because you may have more or less money to a large degree than some of your friends, that should not be a deal breaker for you. Should not be a deal breaker at all. I'll speak for myself. I have friends that my wife and I have planned accordingly. I'm super blessed for that. And we've been very, very diligent, live within our means. And, because of that, we've seen the fruits of that. And some of our friends haven't. So that just is the way that it is. I don't think any differently of my friends. I have other friends where I look, I'm like, man, I gotta hit the next like GameStop meme investment to get even close to the financial success that they have. But they treat me the same. Financial status should not be the end all. That being said, though, with curiosity, there is a correlation, and I've noticed this where, generally speaking, the more wealthy someone is, they are more curious and they're actually more open to having more conversations. But then when you realize that someone is of a similar wealth situation, that opens up a whole new world of curiosity, because then I've noticed this where wealthy people go, oh, well, how did you get to this point? Or what did you do here? What made you decide to do this or not do that? So friends of similar status, it's the nature of the beast. Now, the last one, and this one's a little bit more just black and white, not philosophical or anything or qualitative. Wealthy people keep enough assets liquid. So one of the greatest fears in finance, and it doesn't matter who you are, one of the greatest fears in personal finance is to run out of money. In fact, some people are more fearful, of running out of money as opposed to death. I'm in that boat. I mean, if I die, I die. Like life just got a lot easier, right? But running out of money, it's like, like that's terrifying. And so I get it. And there's also nothing worse than overextending yourself. And then you have to start tapping into your principal regardless of your net worth. In academic terms, the wealthy generally have, quote unquote, too much cash relative to their net worth. But when you take a deeper dive into understanding why, it makes total sense. And I want to take that a little further. So the wealthy, they're not just setting aside what we'd call a traditional emergency fund, which is, again, a month of expenses in your checking account and then 3 to 6 months of expenses in your savings. The wealthy may have an emergency fund for themselves, their business. They could be helping family members out financially. I mean, I've met clients where they help out their kids, their grandkids, their nieces and nephews. That's a whole nother bag of worms. But because of all those things, they need more cash. Here's a big one. Here's a huge one. Going back to one thing I mentioned earlier in the episode, taxes. No matter how well you plan, taxes are simply going to be part of the game. I don't care who you are. I've had people, they come in and every single year, and they don't blame me for it, because again, I've done the best I can, and we all do, but they just come April 15th and every quarterly tax bill, they are livid. I'm like, look, man, look, it could be a lot worse. Like, this is the best you could do, the best. So, because of that, taxes can become a drag on your net worth and your portfolio and your income and your liquidity. So, it's just something that when you add all those things together on top of taxes, you're going to need more than the average bear when it comes to cash. Lastly, the wealthy have generally worked extremely hard to get to that level of wealth. And at that point, it's not about skyrocketing their net worth. I mentioned this earlier in the episode. It's about being able to sleep well and breathe easy. And if that means you need to have an overabundance amount of liquidity, so cash or cash equivalents relative to your net worth, then you do. And if you add all those things up, it's no wonder that they're going to have more liquidity than most. Now, I'll close out the episode with this. I went on an episode, this was years ago, and we've become relatively close friends, and he sold his business for, I won't say what, but 9 figures. And this was like 25 years ago. And I'm not saying that's not a lot of money today, but back then that was like unheard of. And I remember I got done with the episode and on his podcast, and we just talked, because generally when you do like a Zoom type of or video podcast, there's about 5 minutes at the beginning where you make sure the mic works and you don't look like an idiot and the camera's working. And then you do the show. There's 5 minutes of schmoozing and letting them know, like, hey, when the episode comes out, like, don't be a jerk, like actually post it and help us out, blah, blah, blah. And we'll do the same. And then you ride off into the sunset. Well, this particular guy, I mean, he gave me like an hour of time and I just happened to have it. And in that hour, he just started opening up and we just kind of became friends. And I remember I asked him toward the end, I go, I got a question. You've made all of this money and that was back then. And what did it grow to? And honestly, like net of tax of the sale, it hadn't really grown in 25 years or so. It didn't really go backwards, but didn't really grow. And I was just stunned by that. And I asked him, what are you investing in? Like, what are you doing? And he kind of just smiled and they got really embarrassed. And I just told him, dude, you can tell me. It's not obviously, like, I'm not going to say anything. Like, it's part of my boards. I am sworn to secrecy. And he said he owned a commercial real estate building, and that's where his old business was. And other than that, he paid off his home when he sold the business. And he's just lived off the interest of his 9-figure sale. And so he kept, I don't know, like 2-3 million in his checking, and then the rest was in his savings account. And my jaw almost dropped. But then I thought about that conversation for a while, and I'm like, he's won. Who cares? Like, he's keeping it as simplistic as possible. Yeah, sure, he's missed out on his growth and all that fun stuff. But like, when you have that amount of wealth, you've already won. So the moral of that is, all things being equal, it's no wonder that wealthy people have a little bit more liquidity than most. And it's because, one, maybe they've already won the game, but then two, they've got a lot more responsibility. And so, I'll close out with this. When you do know, like, when anyone that is of in your circle that has a lot of wealth, you should play this episode and ask them, how much liquidity do you keep? Why? What's the purpose of that? Are you helping out a lot of people? Or is it just concern? Or ask about tax strategy. Ask about how they grew their business. Ask who they work with from a planning standpoint or a CPA standpoint, how they teach their kids about money, or grandkids, if you have kids and you're wanting to instill the same principles with them. But, a lot of wealthy people, wealth can get a bad rap because a lot of people are greedy and they want what these wealthy people have, but a lot of people don't understand the responsibility of it. So just take time to understand these people. They're just like you. They just may have a couple more dollars, but they're the same. So that does it for today's episode. As always, I'm your host, Christopher A. Paniotu, certified financial planning professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing. Take care. As always, thank you for joining me today. If you have questions about today's episode or any personal finance questions, please reach out to me at Cap and Capitalize on Instagram, Chris@capitalizeyourfinances.com, or via our website, capitalizepodcast.com. If you want more Capitalize Your Finances content, head on over to capitalizepodcast.com and check out our blog, free resources, book, and online course. As always, I'm your host, Christopher A. Paniotu, certified financial planning professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing.
The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. Each taxpayer should seek independent advice from a tax professional based on his or her individual circumstances. These materials are provided for general information and educational purposes based upon publicly available information from sources believed to be reliable. The information in these materials may change at any time and without notice, and its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. There is no guarantee that any investment strategy will meet its stated objective. All investments involve risk, including potential loss of principal. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy securities. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There is no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. Roth IRA distributions of principal from a Roth IRA are tax-free. However, any earnings will be taxed at ordinary income rates, and a 10% penalty tax will apply if withdrawn prior to age 59 and a half or within 5 years of the date the Roth IRA was established, whichever is longer. Investments in real estate may be subject to a higher degree of market risk because of concentration in a specific industry, sector, or geographical sector. Other risks can include, but are not limited to, declines in the value of real estate, potential illiquidity, risk related to general and economic conditions, stage of development, and defaults by borrowers. Stock investing includes risks including fluctuating prices and loss of principal. Bonds are subject to market and interest rate risk if sold prior to maturity. Bond values will decline as interest rates rise. Bonds are subject to availability, change in price, call features, and credit risk. Christopher Paniotu is a registered representative with and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Capitalize Your Finances LLC is a separate entity from LPL Financial. Capitalize Your Finances is not registered as a broker-dealer or investment advisor. CRPS conferred by College for Financial Planning. Any other individual or company mentioned in this podcast are not affiliated with Capitalize Your Finances or LPL Financial.